Does it? Is it going? Is it recording right now? Is it? Can you hear and see?
Yeah, it's like I can't. Can you hear me? I don't know.
Oh yes, I'm hearing you.
I just can't hear you right now.
I'm hearing you. Maybe maybe if the video is disabled, the quality.
Yeah, it's like I still can't hear anything.
You cannot.
We can try calling again.
Okay, then I will hang up with this Google and will call from Skype. Phone number.
Hello. Please state your name after the tone, and Google Voice will try to connect you.
Dmitry Kilin.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, this is good. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
How have you been?
Huh? Oh yes, I'm doing good. Doing good. Thank you. How are you?
Good. Good? Yeah. Have you been back to Gainesville at all recently? Or?
Congratulations with your new position. It looks impressive.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we'll see. It's I'm about 3 months in. I'm working at the solar energy office at the Department of Energy. It's trying to help get more solar out there. So I know we're all trying to do, but yeah, it's good. Have you been back to Gainesville at the University of Florida at all recently? Or?
Pardon?
Have you been back to Florida at all recently? Or?
No, last time I was attending Sunnybow and then making a seminar after the conference.
Okay. Yeah, so thanks for doing this. So were you able to hear my description before of kind of the general topic area?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Actually, I do have written answers on all of your questions, but maybe we'll discuss. I will share written answers with you as well. But in the live discussion, we may come up with more topics.
Yeah, exactly. And I won't follow all those questions exactly. We can let it kind of be a guide, and then let the conversation happen organically. So, but I just need to press forward to start the recording, and then we can get started. 1 second.
This call is now being recorded.
Okay, so the first thing I have to ask you is just, do you agree and acknowledge that this call is being recorded and it's okay to use it for the podcast?
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thanks. So to start off, do you mind just stating your name and your title and where you work?
Yes, my name is Dmitry Kilin. I work as an assistant professor at the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry, North Dakota State University, Fargo, North Dakota.
Perfect. And so what kind of research do you work on at your university?
Well, I have two major directions of research. One is photophysics and another is photochemistry. So for photophysics, it is looking for dynamics of photo-excited electronic states in nanomaterials, and it is in connection to materials for photovoltaics. And photochemistry deals with predicting outcome of reactions which are induced either by heat or by laser. So it's photo-induced formation or breaking of chemical bonds. And it has applications towards photocatalysis, photoelectrochemical water splitting, second to any catalytic reactions including combustion, and to laser-assisted chemical vapor deposition.
Okay, and so what kind of tools do you use to look at these research questions? So you do a lot of modeling, right? So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you use those tools and how that kind of connects to experimental research.
It is a healthy combination of commercial software packages and homegrown software packages written by myself, my collaborators, and my students. And the software is built in such a way that it generates observables similar to those observed on experiment. So we target connection to experiment as a primary goal.
Okay, great. Thanks. And I think so. The podcast is kind of aimed at a pretty broad audience, and so we're trying to get kind of general descriptions of how different research areas fit into kind of the realm of quantum physics. So I'm wondering if you could take a little time to kind of discuss how quantum physics actually fits into your research on like photocatalysis and looking at photo-excited states, things like that, at a kind of a broader level.
Well, it is very hard to place a line between my research and quantum physics because it is an integrated part. The questions that I'm trying to address are not possible to solve without quantum physics. And they are even not possible to formulate without quantum physics. So it is everything is on the quantum language. So let's.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so that makes sense. So I think that's a really interesting point to explore further, especially since you're talking about how your kind of fundamental research is connected to actual applications. For catalysis and for solar cells. So I'm wondering if you can kind of touch on how quantum physics is required to describe the kind of research you do and how that kind of enters the technology that it's related to. If that makes sense.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It makes sense. So there is an impact on society of this research, or at least potential impact to society. So works on photocatalysis, on predicting the dynamics of charge carriers induced by sun. It is what actually is going on at the core of solar cells. So it is resolving the energy challenge, providing energy security for the society. How we will get enough energy after the oil and coal are deteriorated. The work on catalytic reactions, it is more practical and maybe less exciting, but it is needed for synthesis, for efficient combustion of fuels, maybe even some connection to rocket engines for jets. And the laser-assisted chemical vapor deposition, it deals with microelectronics, because one is hearing from news that from day to day, one is developing microchips with higher and higher density of transistors per square inch or whatever, square nanometer. So right now, whatever, like 20 or maybe 15 nanometers. And when we approach this nanoscale, one needs to take into account quantum effects, and one needs quantum effects in semiconductors, in metals, but also quantum effects of dielectrics of insulators. So with this laser-assisted chemical vapor deposition, one can deposit one atomic layer insulator very efficiently on good substrates and contribute to further miniaturization of microelectronics.
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you. That's a great explanation, I think, of how we can kind of connect the fundamental understandings that we need of quantum phenomena with the technology we have. Because I think what you're kind of getting at is, as we become more and more advanced, these areas of quantum physics are going to be even more important in developing better technologies that we need to take advantage of.
Yes, yes.
And so I think that's kind of, yeah, go ahead. There's something you want to say?
No. I'm just listening and waiting for next questions.
Okay. So before we get into kind of, I think this is a good segue into talking about then quantum physics and society and thinking about how we can get kind of the general public to understand it better and understand why they might need to know it a little bit better because they use so much technology surrounding it. But before we get into that, I just kind of wanted to ask you how you kind of got excited about getting into this area, which does use quantum physics so heavily. Kind of what first drew you to that area and why you like studying that kind of work?
Well, this is very multi-dimensional question, and it is much more personal than your other questions. So it is a superposition, entanglement, and mix of personal curiosity, interests of my teachers, interests of my collaborators, the reading of exciting papers, listening to talks at the conferences, and also realistically judging of my abilities, like arsenal of the tools. So it is what is interesting, what is possible to do, what is exciting. So it is. It was developing of research programs through years. But for very simple, generally, it is an idea that if one can predict an outcome of experiment or some observation before doing it, it provides a very big intellectual reward. Just being able to make some predictions.
Yeah, I agree. That is a very powerful thing to do, having done some of it myself too in the past. And I think that actually that's an interesting kind of side path to go down, is to talk a little bit more about those pieces of software that you touched on that basically allow us to model systems, quantum physics. I wonder if you could describe that in a little more, how those pieces of software actually do generate those predictions using some of the principles of quantum mechanics.
So can you repeat the question, please?
Sure, yeah. Basically, getting at, I think this is kind of an interesting area to a lot of people, of how you can use these modeling software to use the principles of quantum mechanics to then predict actual real-life observables. So I'm wondering if you could just go kind of into a little more detail about how that works and how you use quantum physics in that kind of process.
Okay, so before we go to these principles of software, one needs to get an idea like what quantum physics is, which principles are governing the dynamics of electrons and nuclei on the atomic scale. Right?
Right, yeah, exactly.
And those principles are very counterintuitive. They are different from we can see in our everyday life, what we can see as a lay person, like a piece of wood or a stone that if you release it, it falls. If you throw it, it flies. In everyday,
so we would call those like classical objects, right?
Pardon me?
Right, so those would be like classical objects, right?
Yes, classical objects. And for classical objects, be very deterministic. Set up average position, set up velocity, and so forth. On the quantum level, the laws are very counterintuitive. If we take like 3 feet, a meter, and divide it by a billion times, it will be a typical atomic scale. So very, very tiny scale. And there, objects do not have deterministic coordinates. They behave more like waves. And our common sense fails to predict their behavior. On one hand. On another, there is these theories were developing for a little less than a century, and there is a way of mathematically predict how the objects on an atomic scale would behave. And this can be modeled mathematically by computer programs. So finding the time evolution or typical stationary states of these quantum objects, and out of this there are procedures that lead from dynamics of these waves towards observables. There are well-determined procedures that we can improve or design, but for each experiment there is a way to connect behavior of this wave-like quantum objects to an observable. Was it something related to your question?
Yeah, that's great. I think that is really the powerful part of it. Even if quantum theory can seem counterintuitive at times, you're basically saying we have this mathematical description that we can plug into our computer code that ends up being able to predict reality.
Right. Yeah. Well, with some limitation, it is not like all aspects of the reality, but at least on a very short time intervals, on a very small time scales, one can predict the future developments.
Right. Perfect. You kind of mentioned that quantum physics is counterintuitive. Are there specific areas that you kind of think about as being the most counterintuitive? Maybe the areas that are the most difficult for you to understand at first, or that students have difficulty understanding?
Well,
I know that's a big question.
It is the more appropriate question will be which parts of quantum theory are less counterintuitive and easier to understand.
There you
go. Well, it is a little technical, but there is if you look on the basics, there is a so-called Ehrenfest theorem that makes connection and translates behavior of quantum objects onto language of classical objects, like pieces of matter with well-defined coordinates and masses, like average trajectories. But everything that deals with quantum, because, well, we cannot imagine it with usual intuitive expectations. So to predict this behavior, one needs to be mathematically equipped right away. So it is not possible to speak about quantum effects without some level of math, some level of calculus. It is not something over the head. It is just regular basics of calculus and differential equations, but they are needed right away. One can explain something on figures, but it will not be helpful for practical reasons to do science or operate equipment or for the just learning. So it is mathematically intense.
Yes, I can definitely agree with that. Require a lot of mathematical background. That's great. Okay, I think I want to, for the sake of time, kind of move into kind of this discussion of quantum physics and society. So I think what was kind of a big interest in starting this podcast was this kind of this feeling that quantum physics seems kind of impossible in popular culture, it's kind of being as impossible to understand. And kind of want to explore that area and kind of get your opinions on if you think that we could do a better job explaining it, and if so, how, or and also kind of if you think it's important for the public to understand quantum physics better and how it relates to their everyday lives and society. So maybe we can start with kind of that first question, is kind of popular culture seeing it as kind of an impossible discipline to understand, and if you think there are ways to do a better job at explaining it.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing it up, and it is also very multiple aspects questions. So,
So feel free to address any part of it, however you like. Definitely keeping this free and open to kind of your take on it. Definitely seems as kind of just a launching point.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. So, for example, many of people have kids, and many of kids ask their parents, how does this or that working, or why it is working, or why it is not working. And if you want to look good in eyes of your kid, you may want to have a ready answer, like why flat screen TV is working. And this is one of the connections where quantum theory is needed, because we are surrounded by a lot of technological devices, technological advances that make our life comfortable, and we are so get used to it, so we do not realize some of those, and it's easier to name technological aspects of our life that do not have quantum effects behind it. Most of what we use, all electronics, all computers, are not possible without quantum effects. Of course, we can happily use these devices without knowing how they work, but it is beneficial maybe for curiosity, maybe for telling our kids to take science, technology, engineering, and mathematics STEM career path. And also, there is one aspect like why the average citizen should recognize importance of quantum theory, because there should be some recognition, because some other aspects of societal life, like law and medicine, they have direct connection between professionals and everyday citizens. Like, I'm coming and I'm seeing my doctor and I'm saying thank you. I'm coming in, well, hopefully not, but if I need, I come in and see my attorney and saying thank you. But in everyday life, I never come to the person who designs a cell phone for me. I never come to designer of theories behind it. I never come to, I rarely come to a teacher who gives education to my nephew. So there is a little disconnection in society, and one may want to understand that still there is a connection, and there is a big part of our life that depends on these technological advances, which depend on understanding of quantum phenomena. Does it?
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Is it a good start towards quantum and society area?
Yeah, definitely. I love that idea that we don't see the people who have made our smartphone like we do the people that we go to see the doctor, and that's I think that brings up an interesting point of kind of trying to figure out how we get people excited to study quantum physics. If we could connect them to the people who are doing that work, to kind of show them who these people are and what they do. I wonder if that could help inspire some more interest in the topic and a desire to understand it.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for bringing this question up. So, yes, I'm listening.
So yeah, I think you touched on a few points there. You kind of talked about why it's important so that we understand how our devices work, and also then to kind of motivate the next generation of STEM workforce in a way. So I'm kind of curious, kind of pursuing that path a little bit more, how important you see that is, as we get more and more technology that depends on quantum physics. Do you kind of see that we're going to need a larger workforce in that area to kind of support all these things that make our life so comfortable?
Okay, yeah, thank you for bringing this up. Jonathan, did you or maybe your friends play computer games?
Yes, I definitely play computer games.
Which computer games did you play?
Oh man, let me think. StarCraft.
Okay. Did you ever expose to game Civilization?
What was that called?
Civilization.
Oh yeah, Civilization. Yeah, I definitely love that game.
Well, of course. As adults, we shouldn't rely in our judging of worth on computer games, but it has. When being a little younger, I did play it, and it has interesting ideas behind it. So you run your society, compete with neighbors, and you decide between getting of your little civilization to grow, to be like to feed everyone, to develop some technologies and get wealthy, or to invest in finding new technologies in science. And in this example of a computer game, you can prevent you as a gamer from investing into science, but then you will lose to your competitors because new technologies will make your civilization more and more advanced. So
yeah, exactly. I remember that happening.
So it is the role of science in the society is not immediate. If we suddenly stop to fund science, if we fire all scientists, nothing bad will happen in year, 2, or maybe 5 years. But on a long period, there will be drastic disadvantages. So
yeah, I think Go ahead.
A lot of invisible or maybe visible, but we do not recognize them as integral part of our society, do depend on technology level. Like right now, we cannot live without communications. We are making this interview over the internet, but there are hubs that transfer information, and there are tech persons who support it. So if we will not provide education for these tech persons, then with time we will lose communication, and we'll need to ride horses to see each other and talk. And right now we have many places have high concentration of population. If losing technology, even if we are not looking onto comfort of life or consumer society, just to maintain constant density of population, one needs all this like water supply, the communications, and without right tech experts, it will deteriorate. The life expectation will be not as good, and population may deteriorate. It is very pessimistic scenario. I hope it never happens, but some level of technology needs people who can support it, and to generate new generations of the tech people, one needs to have university teachers, university instructors, and how to maintain the sufficient level of these university instructors, because typically the student can learn more than teacher develops. So in order to grow better students, teachers should grow themselves. And they can grow only by attacking the unknown problems of science. Teachers should grow themselves, and they should be at the same time teachers and researchers. How do you like this?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think that's right on, and I think that you've touched on a couple of things again in that kind of description. And one of which was talking about, we need science for effects that we can't see for 2, 5, or even more years. And so that kind of discussion, I think, then gets right into kind of some things I want to talk about funding choices we make for supporting science and some of the basic research for things like quantum physics. So I don't know if you've thought much about this. You've probably applied for a lot of funding opportunities through the government, through the National Science Foundation, things like that, Department of Energy. But I'm kind of curious about your thoughts about Congress people who determine the amounts of funding that we send to kind of basic research endeavors. That's another part of society where we need to think about what their understanding is of some of this basic science. So I want to know what your thoughts are about how you think kind of Congress people or other people in Washington and their understanding of quantum physics and how that affects kind of how they decide on funding levels and things like that. Have you had any experience with that kind of connection?
Well, once when I was working at the different school at University of South Dakota, they arranged visits to senators and congressmen by scientists from the state, and just telling briefly what we are doing and formally thanking for support, which was a positive experience for me. But
that's it.
So.
But yeah, what happened?
Well, I was at a very small role, just happy young scientist, thanking for support and being very enthusiastic about the support to be continued. But the actual support comes not, well, what scientists do see, it is not direct connection to Senate and Congress. It is scientists do see competitive environment of grantsmanship from federal agencies, as you mentioned, National Science Foundation and Department of Energy and other agencies, and some private sector funding. So,
okay.
Yeah, right? And
yeah, go ahead.
This is a very hard task to decide what to fund and not what to fund. Of course, I cannot be completely independent expert in this interview, unbiased, because I have a big temptation to protect my own area of research and tell in public, like, support computational chemistry and electron dynamics. This is the best. But I'm trying to be objective.
Well, I'm curious. So what do you think are some of the kind of the applications or consequences of that kind of basic funding for your area that we might need more attention to?
Well,
for like that, so that funding in computational chemistry and photodynamics. So can we connect that to some applications that maybe Congress needs to pay more attention to?
Well, there should be. Well, I cannot judge for those people. I can just share the opinion that it should be a very healthy balance between sponsoring practical applied research and fundamental research, because they will give benefits on different timescales. So funding some applied research will provide benefits for society in, say, 5 years, and funding fundamental science may give some benefits in 20 years or give no benefits at all. It is very risky. But without doing it, there is a high chance of getting disadvantageous results in several years to come. And where is the border between these two? It should be, probably there are some scientific methods or statistical methods or based on previous trajectory of development, how to define this line. But I can probably tell what should be expectations of good proposals, what good science is that is worth of funding. But it is very private opinion. This is a much bigger problem than one expert can develop a decision. So,
I definitely agree that is private, and there's so many different disciplines looking for funding. But I think, I'm just curious about your opinion in your area of research, kind of where you see that you're interested in kind of pursuing more research. are there certain areas that you see as kind of hot topic?
Well,
that are related to quantum physics types of things.
I see what you are bringing up. Well, before I go directly to this answer, I want to continue a little on this different directions of the applied research and fundamental research. So, if we sponsor only applied research, then there will be no development in the far future. So there should be some amount of funding directing to venture, to risky, exciting, teasing research that is not immediately supported by all experts. So it's like exploratory areas, and it is definitely needed to be supported all the time. Not at the biggest amount, but it always should be there. And for healthy development of science and for good impact to society, all this risky stuff should be connected to previous bulk of knowledge. So it is an important criterion for funding, supporting the science. And how to develop it, where it comes from, bringing one method from one area to another one, or coming from insights and being inspired by demands of the community. These all are possible mechanisms. But for practical questions, this again, you will interview different people and different scientists, and they will give very different answers. There are some quantum information processing, like teleportation, quantum computers, that being discussed for the last 20 years, and they may come into level to impact the society maybe in other 20 years, but it is excites thoughts.
So one of the long-term kind of fundamental research that you're talking about, that it could have huge rewards 20 years down the line, and we need to keep investing in it now.
May or may not. For immediate connection, I would mention a possibility of a solar paint. So right now, solar panels became cheaper and cheaper, more and more efficient, but they're still panels. You need to carry it and mount it on the roof of your house or make a plant of solar panels. But the reason, if one makes a little more advanced, one can go to the practical. Well, I do not see it be paint when you come to your window.
Right.
Paint it with special paint, and just paste an electrode, and then you're equipped has sufficient electricity. That are originally designed for other purposes, apply several layers of specific paint and get electricity out of it. So the technology based on quantum dots is approaching this level. Instead of prefabricated devices, it will be just paint. Again, it is
right, and then you integrate it into your house, so your house generating the electricity.
Right.
Which is great. Yeah.
I have no connection with practical aspects. I'm doing the theory, but from reading papers, listening conferences, it is like breeze of this technology is in the air. And one of the
right, and that's great.
Yep. Like Los Alamos
National.
Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate your kind of reaching out into that more applied area. So I think what would be interesting for our listeners to kind of hear about is then how your fundamental research connects to those applied research areas. So like you mentioned, quantum dots being used for the kind of building integrated TV, the photovoltaic panels. Maybe you could touch on like how some of your fundamental research, looking at the atomic level and actually quantum mechanical processes at the atomic level, then kind of translate to those applied technologies years down the road.
Well, for this solar applications, the main idea is to convert energy of solar light into electricity, and electricity is motion of charged particles. So motion of charged, so these quantum particles need to be driven by different spatial locations on the cost of energy of solar quantum. And this motion of charges on atomic level is affected by quantum nature of materials. And there is also, I didn't mention it before, but getting excited, was excited for the last 10, 20 years about so-called nanoscience, now nanotechnology. And the idea there is not only atoms and electrons in atoms exhibit quantum properties, but also if you take a piece of material like a semiconductor and carve it in a small size, then the quantized electron cannot leave these borders, and these borders impose so-called quantum confinement, make it to behave in more quantum way. And these effects of how the size of the very little piece of material are declared, one can get healthy benefits and make the solar energy conversion more efficient. Is it related to your question?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, good. And another aspect,
thank you.
Another
go ahead.
Answer to your question 2 minutes ago about the connections of quantum physics to society. It is maybe not so direct, and I did mention quantum information as a long time, solar paints as something that may come in few years. Electronics is already developing, and there is a mid-range perspective of nanomedicine. So, and it is what many people face, because medicine, health, it is what all we need. Right now, and it is not my area, but I'm sharing the more or less common knowledge. If the patient is treated with medication, the medication is designed to treat only small part of the body, small organ, part of the tissues, but all other tissues are suffering from unnecessary effect. So there is a necessity to deliver medication to a very local part of the tissues. And there is a development of nanocapsules that will be delivered to right place and dissolved, and releasing their contained medication at the right place. But this is possible only if these nanocapsules are smaller than the pores in membranes. They should be penetrating. It's also on the size of like 10, 50 nanometers. And prediction of behavior of such capsules and their design cannot be done with understanding of some quantum natures of chemical bond and so forth. So it is another application that could be affecting the society at a mid-range perspective.
Yeah, I think those are great examples. Those are such fascinating areas that could be game changers once we know. And the key is that we need to understand the kind of quantum physical phenomenon at that nano scale to really understand how to harness these, correct?
Yeah, yes, I agree.
And so would it be correct to say that your kind of research, you're really focusing on looking at some of the basic fundamental properties of things like these quantum dots or these nanoscale particles, to try to understand how they behave?
Yes. How the charge carriers like electrons, excited states, develop in time in these nanostructures. It is one area. And another area, how the chemical bonds are affected, are perturbed by external perturbation like laser, like photochemistry. How can you break bond in a molecule by photoexciting it? So two areas, photophysics and photochemistry.
Okay, great. So for the sake of time, I want to make sure I want to let you go soon. I know you've spent a lot of time answering these questions, so thank you. I just wanted to touch on teaching for a little bit, because I know you mentioned you just finished your final exams, which were those presentations, right?
Oh, sure.
So I just wanted to touch on that. I mean, I think teaching is such an integral part of connecting these complicated scientific phenomena like quantum physics to society. So I'm kind of just curious about first hearing what you taught and kind of what you think about your students' reactions to learning some of these kind of quantum chemistry type principles.
Oh, thank you much, Jonathan, for bringing this up. I caught a very an ideal, perfect word in your question. So, teaching and research are integrated. They must be integrated, and it is one of my career goals to keep them integrated in what I'm doing. So, there were a couple of courses that I taught at University of South Dakota and North Dakota State Universities. So the names of courses were a little different, but basically they come into two categories. One is they both were graded courses. This one is first quantum theory course for chemistry major graduate students, and another was computational chemistry, open for both graduates and upper division undergraduates. So these courses were covering broad topics, but before going specifics, there were two philosophies that I cannot avoid. One of them, those are conflicting views, conflicting points, aspects of these courses involving quantum physics, but I was due to keep them both. So philosophy number one is that one may need to sacrifice the amount of materials learned for the sake of the depth of knowledge. So we better slow down on learning basic principles and theorems and making sure that everyone in the class get them and can apply them and understand the basics. So sometimes I even needed to stop delivering material on quantum chemistry and present some missing portions of the calculus of differential equations, because without it one cannot go further.
And do you think that also part of that is having to go slowly because some of the concepts in quantum mechanics and quantum chemistry are so counterintuitive that it takes longer?
Exactly for pointing at it, because it is counterintuitive. If we do not cast the information on the mathematical language, it will have no use. It will be no good for further usage. It is just not possible to describe these concepts just by speaking and showing figures.
Well, that's interesting. So you're saying that mathematics is integral for anyone to understand truly what quantum physics is kind of saying? Or is that too strong?
Well, I was trying to make a teaching experiment to make it as visual as possible. And the best advance in what I was trying is to, at the end of the quantum course, to allow students to select their little research areas of interest and apply their new knowledge from the course to explore it. So doing mini projects. And most of them were agreeing to formulate their problems of their interest on the language of wave packet evolution in, let's say, one-dimensional potential of the shape that reproduces their system of interest, like interface between two semiconductor or donor and acceptor molecule. And when one is modeling evolution, time evolution of wave packet, it is probably the not only, but the best way to visualize quantum theory on the semi-intuitive way. So, and there is now we are touching the philosophy number two. It immediately goes to integrating learning and research. So I'm at the beginning of my career, and I didn't have much chances to interact with undergraduates. But I was lucky to teach graduate courses, and most of people who come to graduate school, they are motivated adults, and they look into grow as teachers and researchers. So they already have some preliminary research interests, and if you just give them correct tools, they will wrap it up and satisfy their curiosity. For undergraduates, it may be true, maybe not. It is more like helping young talents to develop and see all aspects of science. But at the graduate level, it is high level of motivation. So I was trying to give graduate students an opportunity to practice their skills, especially in computational chemistry course. And I've got a very positive feedback. So they were making it with much bigger enthusiasm that compared to just traditional learning process.
Oh, that's really interesting. So you're talking about with your graduate students, was it that they're bringing their own research projects into the course and trying to apply the teaching material to their own projects, or would you give them research ideas? Or?
Exactly. And since even for motivated adults, intuitive aspect and visualization are important, there was a homework assignment to generate a scientific visualization like molecular dynamics of chemical structures and publish it on YouTube, which like are available to general public, and making this course adding, well, to some extent, global dimension.
Oh yeah, I would love to see some of those videos.
Oh, please, I will send you links.
Came out of that course.
And at the end of the course, students were making presentations of their mini research. So they were explaining it, and it is also was recorded and published as a video clips.
That's great. Are there areas in kind of your quantum chemistry courses that maybe in your undergraduate courses that you found were the hardest for students to understand, or do you kind of find ways maybe to help them understand it better?
Well, this is the question that we are already discussing. We are coming to this aspect again and again from different angles. So with sufficient math preparation, if a student was excellent in calculus and in differential equations, and ideally did have a differential equation, then quantum theory is the easiest course. Then all are wrapping up immediately. There are some if one tries to make a connection between quantum and everyday behavior, there are some traps, counterintuitive, like absence of precise coordinate, this uncertainty principle, superposition principle, and they cannot be explained on the regular language. One can make analogies to a string on a guitar or waves on the surface of liquid, but it is it is not exact. With math, with specific equations, like equations in partial derivatives that are describing these waves of electrons, everything comes to the place. It becomes easy.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. You're right that we are kind of circling the same idea, which it seems like what you're getting at is, in addition to having an open mind so that you can kind of understand some of the counterintuitive concepts, you're basically saying that maybe a big part of helping the general public understand quantum mechanics is more about mathematics. So if we can get people more comfortable with the mathematics, that will make it much easier for them to approach something like quantum mechanics.
Yeah. I think we we agree on this opinion.
Yeah. I think that's a very interesting perspective. That's not something that always comes across, and I think that's not always something that the public maybe understands about it. I think that's some interesting point to emphasize. That's great. I think we're about out of time. I don't want to take up more of your time, but we got a lot of good information there. So that's perfect. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you, Jonathan. I enjoyed our conversation very much because you induced me to think about some aspects that for my everyday academic life looks self-evident, but you induced me to look from different angle, and I appreciate it. This is.
I'm glad to hear that. And I will definitely. So you're going to be. We're going to interview a couple people and then put it all together in a podcast. But I will definitely send you a link when it's all done, so you can see what the final result is.
Okay, and I can share some notes or links to video clips which you are welcome to use towards your preparation.
I would love that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Take care, Dimitri.
Yeah.
Great to catch up.
Yeah. Thank you, Jonathan, and all good luck to you.
Yeah. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.